Hey, Linda. Thanks. Sorry. Yep. I don't know why it was muted. Well, I do know why. It was supposed to just be muted at the beginning. I do apologize. I will just trim the first 10 minutes for normal people, for other people. But we'll start again. It's fine. Thank you for joining. Okay, so this week, we're going to go through the COVID inquiry and it being a scam. We're going to go through the SAS Pretorian No More. And we're also going to talk about how a teabag can help you heal. So a little bit of fun to finish off. What I want you to hold in your mind when we talk about the COVID thing is what was actually going on in 2020. So we all lived it. Right, we all lived it, and what everybody's doing now, whether it's media, whether it's AI, whether it's normal kind of algorithms and Google search engines and stuff like that, regardless of what it is, they are rewriting history, right? So, but I want you to hold in the back of your mind the reality of what was going on in 2020. And the key reality of what was going on in 2020 before the lockdown, right, is nobody was dying en masse. It just wasn't happening. There was no excess deaths, despite the fact that COVID, the first death by the coroner has stated the first death in the United Kingdom was in January. Right. And if it takes 7 to 10 days to become virulent and dangerous and symptoms and all of those things, that means it must have been here at the latest after New Year. Right. But it's actually, they believe it was here kind of mid-December, which means we should have had the mass deaths by the end of January. Right? I want you to hold that in the back of your mind whenever we talk about these things. I want you to have your own experiences grounding you. For some reason, people have forgotten what actually transpired. And I know other countries were different to what was going on in the UK. And we managed to do quite a lot in the UK to kind of push back on the bullshit. But I think it's because we were just like, but this is just fucking insane. So I want you to think about the fact that the telly was telling you people were dropping dead in the street. The telly was showing you what was going on in China, where they were literally welding people into their apartment blocks. We had the newspapers and the media telling us all of these cases and cases and cases and cases. Bearing in mind the actual definition of pandemic was changed in 2009 from epidemics, where like mass epidemics all happening at the same time with high mortality, to fast spread, right? Fast spread, but not necessarily mortality. So technically, the cold could fit under what's now known as a pandemic, okay? Because it's about contagion and spread, not about actual effects. So it's really important to have in the back of your mind. In the United Kingdom, the high infectious HCID, high consequence infectious disease, which is a government body. It's a government body that looks at high consequence infectious diseases and decides whether they're dangerous or not. They had downgraded COVID the week before the lockdown because of the low mortality rates. And the low mortality rates, according to the HCID, was like less than 1% at the height of when we should have been dropping dead, right? And I also want you to have in the back of your mind that probably in those 2 weeks of lockdown, what you didn't hear was non-stop ambulances. What you didn't hear from friends or family members who happened to be, you know, the elite class, so they were the key workers, was that, you know, Bob down the street's dead. Jim, the old mucker I've worked with for 10 years, dropped dead last night. You weren't hearing of people dying, right? So people were not dying. They absolutely categorically were. We lived it. The COVID inquiry and all the inquiries are designed to create a narrative. This narrative is that we should have done more earlier, right? And even in that statement alone belies the fact that they have just fucking boomeranged the retardedness of their own inquiry. If they are saying we should have done something earlier, they are then saying COVID was here earlier, and therefore the mass deaths should have happened earlier, right? Nobody's picked up on that teeny tiny little thread of information, because people just aren't paying attention to the actual fucking words they're using. If they're saying, and this is one of the things they say, that 23,000 people would have been alive had they locked down earlier. People didn't die until the lockdowns. So if you actually look at the graphs, people started dying the second, third week of April. When did they lock down? 23rd of March. There was no 23,000, 50,000, 80,000 deaths pre-lockdown. So how did locking down, how would introducing anything earlier have done anything, because people weren't dying until they started introducing all the fucking measures, right? This is the actual timeline. When we look at the, and I did a lot of, for those of you who kind of haven't, like, it can maybe new to me, I did a lot of work on COVID in 2021 and 2022, because we were going to file an injunction and basically rattled too many cages that my PC was hacked and everything was taken by some, I would say, some agency. So when I'm talking about COVID, I did fucking, I would say, thousands of hours worth of work. Anyway, when you look at the actual graphs of COVID in the UK, end of December, first death, mid-January, end of January, coroner stated, and even before they kind of found originally it was kind of end of March, mid-end March, and then they found an earlier one, right? So even if it was mid-end March, people should have still all died by then, because the reason they locked down was because it was so dangerous. Remember when you were out in the pub and it was all right if you were sat down, but it was only going to kill you if you stood up, or if you wear this mask, they literally said on the packet, will not stop COVID, you're going to be fine. It's just, so people were not dying. HCID said low mortality. The all-cause mortality was 96% survival rate, right? That includes, the elderly. And lots of old people who had COVID were all dying at like 84, 85. So they were dying older than the expected age, which was hilarious when it was all coming out. So let's also think about what happened once we kind of went into mass panic mode. And so obviously we had the politicians, we had the media, we had everybody being called terrorists. We had, every single day the cases and you're like, okay, but you're not telling me, like, there was not this barrage of deaths at all. So we went up during April, and then it dropped back down, and then it went up as soon as we started getting vaccinated, say December, January, right? And then up every time they threw a booster out, more people died. So the excess deaths did not kick in until the lockdown. But what was actually going on in April? They closed the hospitals. They told people to stay at home unless they were literally on death's door, right? By which time anybody who was very unwell was very unlikely to recover, right? They closed the care homes. Doctors refused to go to the care homes. Who remembers that heroic couple? The two, there was a girl and a boy who locked themselves in the care home to look after the elderly who were there, and the doctors were refusing to go, right? So we've got an elderly population who are more likely to die anyway, because that's just a fact. Like, you're more likely to die because you're old, right? It's not evil. I'm not killing granny, it's just a fact. We had the NHS giving people COVID in the hospitals when they were in there and discharging them into care homes with no medical pathway, right? Because they weren't using the medicines. If they were using the medicines, they were using remdesivir, and they were using that very early on in the UK. So they didn't use it till very late in the USA, which is very strange. But they were using it very early on in the UK because the WHO had told everybody to use it in their January PowerPoint, which I had. Right. So if you're awake in 2020, you managed to get all this fucking information. Maybe that's why stuff got stolen. Anyway, so the WHO was pushing it out. Then it got repealed because everybody started fucking dying. We also had do not resuscitate orders put on the elderly or on the disabled, right? So if you happen to be disabled and you were at home and getting progressively worse, finally end up in hospital, they would just leave you to die. We also had the Liverpool care pathway resurrected, even though it shouldn't be. Mass spikes in the use of midazolam. We had so people were not being treated. You couldn't go to the doctors because there was nothing they could do for you. If you had a positive PCR test within 28 days of your death, you died from COVID. So let's not forget there was that young lad who committed suicide. He jumped out of the top of the halls of residence, but because he'd had a positive COVID death, they marked it as COVID death, and his dad took them to court, and he spent 18 months at least fighting the fact that they'd said that his son died from COVID, and he very clearly jumped out of a fucking window and killed himself. There were also people in horrific car accidents who died from COVID. So it was always from. And after about 2 years, they got caught out, and then it was with COVID, right? But they didn't retroactively go and change anything. They just changed the way they were doing. They also were using 40 plus cycles or when they were using the PCR test. So anything over 25 will find anything in your DNA, right? That's literally what Carrie Mullins, the person who created the PCR test, said. We also know that you can't tell the difference between coronavirus, which is a cold, coronavirus, pregnancy, and about 70 other things, especially if it's over 25 threshold, and HIV and all of those things will show up. We also have about 200 kind of viruses knocking around in our system, which aren't causing any harm at all whatsoever. It's called, it's like in our old DNA, old like ancestral DNA, that's just kind of knocking around, right? Doesn't doing anything, isn't even active 90% of the time. That's the other thing the PCR test couldn't tell you, whether it was live, whether it's just in your DNA, whether you're immune to it or not. And I'm not getting into the virus, no virus, germ theory, because they're all both very, very, very old theories. And in the same way, I wouldn't rock up to a hospital to be amputated by somebody, just giving me a belt to bite down on. I'm not going to trust that they did not have the same technology that we have today, right? So while if you are unwell, you are more likely to create a very hospitable environment to non-great things. And when you are very, very well, it's harder for non-great things to take over you. Viruses and germs do exist. They do exist. So do parasites. So do, they literally have been engineering. If you don't want to call it a virus, That's fine. Call it whatever the fuck you want, but they have been engineering things in labs that they then release into the population that then causes people physiological complications, right? So the easiest terminology is a fucking virus, right? But let's actually consider what a virus is. It is something that cannot exist with outside of a host, right? So I could pass it on to you. And then it goes into your DNA, and then you pass it on to somebody else with your extra DNA on, and then they pass it on to somebody else with their extra DNA on. And the original virus is not the same as the one that's been through 10 people. It's completely different. And what happens with the vast majority of viruses is they actually then become weaker. And who else remembers the newspaper articles and the scientists getting very stressed out because they were convinced there would be no more coronavirus by the summer? Who remembers that going on in March 2020? Because we were doing the herd immunity, it was rolling through the population, there was no increased death spikes. We had the Imperial College London did their modelling, said everybody's going to fucking die. Nobody was dying. The virus was doing what it was supposed to be doing. Also, don't know whether you were aware or not, that if you had COVID and then you got a fucking cold, the actual very normal cold killed COVID, right? So you cured COVID with a cold. So we had the scientists getting really fucking stressed out because their entire plan was going to waste. That is why they locked down. The reason why they locked down was to isolate people so that the stronger versions of virus, because it's not traveling through people, actually then has an opportunity to breed and take hold in the host. It's called bottlenecking. So every time they locked down, it was with the pure reason to ensure whether it was the actual different strains that they released, because there was an A, B, C, D, E, and F, like all these random strains appeared out of nowhere overnight, but all came from one bat, being completely different, but pretty much the same. Let's not forget, it was coronavirus plus HIV glued together with a graphene seam, which doesn't happen in real life. Let's not forget that Wuhan was giving shitloads of fucking American money by the NIH to create this. Let's not forget it was also being created in the North Carolina University, who were working together. Like, at what point do people like actually remember all this information? Because I swear they just think, oh wait, it was like the number of people who are still obsessed with thinking it was China. China was used by the USA government. Okay, we have the WHO, who directed everything. Who is the biggest contributors to the WHO? China and the USA, right? So it was a joint collaboration between the global elites, of which China was used, right? So Trump's not calling for reparations from China anymore, is he? Right? I stand by something I said in 2020, 2021. We should all be asking America for some fucking money. Anyway, okay, look, it was the global elites, right? They all worked together. I mean, I'm not stupid enough to think it was just one. It wasn't. They were all working together to try and do this, right? It's humans against the cabal. That's it. But the sole purpose of the lockdowns was to create a stronger viral strain, was to not. When they say to slow down the spread, that's exactly what they meant, right? It wasn't to stop the spread, because you stop the spread by it running through the population. It almost completely gone by itself when they locked us down. So what we see from the COVID inquiry is that they are plucked this number of 23,000 people out of the air using a model, right? Not actual factual data of when people died, and going, isn't this fucking weird that Here, when everybody was out and about and we weren't social distancing, like, none of that shit was going on. Like, people were just living their fucking lives. Also, it was here over Christmas and New Year. And what happens in Christmas and New Year in Judo-Christian based cultures? Lots of fucking families getting up in each other's spaces. Like, if COVID was a real threat, the Western world would have died out by the end of January. We also had the who chose to keep it quiet until the end of January. They didn't tell anyone. We had Japan noticing that something fucking funny was going on mid-December. The WHO said it was nothing to be worried about. We had Japan saying there's people-to-people transmission here. This isn't nothing to worry about. I can see all this chatter on the back end. Something needs to happen. What was China doing? It was exporting all of its people because the Chinese people spend a lot of fucking money at Christmas. So that's how it traveled everywhere. And yes, potentially it was planted in the Wuhan Games, which was August. So, you know, it wasn't the actual origins, whether it was the Wuhan Games, whether it was actually planted the year before, whether it was actually put in the flu vaccines. And that's what I think the reality happened, is it was actually put into the flu vaccines. And in my personal opinion, it was tested the year before, because if you look at the year before's data around, 2018, 2019 in the United Kingdom, in that December, January, there were 40,000 deaths. And they said, we got the wrong strain. Do you remember that? Practice run. It was too lethal. Right? All of a sudden, we did have fucking ambulances back to back. We did have people dying in the fucking corridors. Then 2019, we had popcorn lung. We had all these people who were vaping popcorn lung. And then back in 2019, we had COVID just popped out of nowhere. I believe 2018, 2019 was when they first tried to do it. And then they were like, holy fuck, right? Too many people died. And let's go back in time, right? Let's go back in time to the 1972 Church Committee, where they're talking, and this is where they, you know, they're getting the money to create HIV. But the actual important conversation is the conversation around contagious versus like increased mortality, right? So you can have something which is contagious, but it must have low mortality rates because you can't control it. Or you have something with a really high mortality rate, but it mustn't be contagious. Because when you have both, you have the entire human population wiped out without even thinking about it. This is what the guy who's been doing all the experiments, who's asking for the fucking handouts, this is what he's telling Congress. And so then he says, well, okay, well, if you know, Congress is saying, well, if you were then to, and I've got the exact, I have got the word for words. But it's in one of my 3 bookcases. So the Congress asks the guy, well, how would you do it then? If you were going, because they were talking about biological weapons and chemical weapons, and, you know, there's theories that, you know, China could, because it's 1972, so China and Russia, so, you know, Cold War, so that they have enough of XYZ poison to, you know, kill the entire world. And that's how they get onto contagious versus more, let's just call it more high mortality. And he says the only way you can do it is to line everybody up and jab them one by one, right? And obviously everybody's like, oh my God, it's the vaccine, it's vaccine, it's vaccine. Okay, absolutely, it is the vaccine. But also, they had to line people up, jab them one by one, first. 2018, 2019, fuck, they got it wrong, right? 2019, 2020, they got it right. They got enough people jabbed up. And when somebody is jabbed, they shed, right? And even though people kept saying shedding's a myth, shedding's a psyop, nope, it actually fucking happens. They shed. And that's how it spreads, right? So it was a softly spread. And the reason why I believe it was in the versions that we ended up with 2019, 2020, the version that we all came to know and love as COVID, is because I got the flu early December, and I've had the flu before. So and I've had pneumonia before, and I knew exactly what the flu was, like. Had it. The first day I was feeling good and I was eating things was Christmas Day. I went to my big sister's house and we had Christmas breakfast, and I literally just had I hadn't really eaten for a couple of days, because if you've ever had the flu, you just feel shit, and it's like you just need to sleep it off, right? So I was in recovery, getting better. First day I was like out and about, up and out of bed, and kind of eating. And I had like a little bit of toast with a bit of pate on, and that was it. And I love food. So I was like, I love food. And then I went home, and 2 days later I was on the floor, like unable to function, as though I'd just been, I don't know, launched out of a building and run over by a car, right? And then progressively, like rapidly downhill. So bearing in mind, I already had a weakened immune system because I was in recovery from a viral infection. And your body is struggling to function. And then I experienced something that was completely different. And so anybody who says there was no such thing as COVID, the only reason they're saying that is because they never experienced it, right? Because I literally had the flu, then I had COVID. And I didn't have COVID psychosymptomatic, because I had it late December, early January. Nobody knew what the fuck it was. I went in the doctor's office on the 28th of December, because what had happened the day before is this is disgusting. I literally had infectious pus oozing out. It was so built up, it literally oozed out and burst my eardrums, and I was deaf for 6 weeks, right, following this. It was disgusting. Never had that before in my entire life, ever. And I don't get ill very often, right? I'm quite a healthy individual, right? But I had been very poorly 2019. I'd had x-rays because I was coughing up blood in 2019 randomly, right? Because my hay fever was terrible at the same time as we had this popcorn lung. And in my opinion, they actually released it was very, very poorly 2019. And I say generally healthy. I mean, other than my kind of normal physical complications, actually quite a healthy individual. So I was an easy target for something. Okay, so we had gammon and leek pie, something that we have quite frequently. It made the actual taste of this gammon and leek pie was like the entire thing was rotten, and it wasn't rotten. The food was, everything tasted funny. That I'd literally gone deaf. I was not awake for more than an hour and a half a day. I literally couldn't even function. After I was lucky enough that I was able to get antibiotics. right? I got antibiotics and painkillers, and I don't take over-the-counter medication lightly. But I had no idea how to combat what was going on using my essential oils, because I had no idea what the fuck was going on. Like I just, whatever was going on, it was nobody knew, right? This is way before anybody knew. And it was weeks and weeks it took me to actually start like even walking again. It took me that, and I'm still partially deaf in one ear. So like, you know, I walk for miles with the dogs every single day. The first time I tried to take the dogs for a walk, and this was like after my ears started coming back, so about 6 weeks after, I could literally only get to the end of the road. And then the next day, like I'd like 2 minutes late, it took me like almost 3 months to kind of get up to like being able to walk around, right? But by the end, once I was kind of up and about, I got a message off my sister, my big sister, who sends me a video, and she's like, "Oh my God, there's a guy. And what he's saying sounds like what was going on with you. Maybe you had this COVID thing." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it really does sound the same. That's so weird." Right? And then now everybody's dying of COVID. And I was like, but no, nobody was dying of COVID back then. And my bloody neighbor, so we went to the pub on New Year's Day, and he's got COPD, right? And he got ill the same time as me. I hadn't seen him, but he was down in the doctors getting antibiotics around the same. So we both like just didn't take them until after New Year's Day, because we were going to go out to It was like, there's no point taking him if I'm going to go out for a drink, because it just flushes out your system, right? Right. And so he is so COPD, very, very unwell, and he survived, right? And I was just like, well, nobody's dying though, because there wasn't any mass, like, there was no like mass ambulances, which had happened the year before. Everybody seems to have forgotten that it happened the year before with the wrong flu vaccine, right? So again, have this in the back of your mind, that they are saying we should have done more sooner, right? We didn't need to do anything. Humans aren't immortal. Humans have to die of something. Sometimes we get ill. Sometimes we recover, right? I never understood this entire, you must get vaccinated so this person doesn't die when they're vaccinated, because they're old and they already have a life limiting and life-ending disease, right? This person's going to die in 6 months. You must take an experimental vaccine so that they get to live those 6 months, even though you're never going anywhere near them. Okay. So the pandemic treaty, they're saying that everything was flawed, everything was flip-floppy, we damaged everybody, we should have done stuff earlier. But they also contradict themselves by saying that the children were, you know, surprisingly harmed by the lockdown. But I didn't surprise anybody, because I was fucking saying it, like, before we locked down, this is the worst thing you can do for children. Like, please don't do this thing. But you know, you just get shut down. And I used to be on the BBC radio all the time, and I was called, can't remember what it was now. The radio host, who I used to be quite good friends with, I would have said, went into this entire tirade over Twitter, pretty much calling me a Nazi. I just want the "yeah, I told you so" moment. Anyway, so he said there was no risk assessment. Everybody was working separately. Nobody was talking to each other. You know, they said that there wasn't any PPE. Do you remember everybody having to wear the fucking black bin bags? And yet there was, what, hundreds of millions of pounds worth of PPE that never got used, that got thrown away. Or, all the hospitals were overrun, but actually the hospitals weren't, because all the elective surgeries were stopped. The ICU might have been, but again, what they did is, some ICUs have quite a few beds. And when I say quite a few, I mean like 5, because intensive care is like small number of beds. So lots of them got rid of 50% of their beds because they didn't want it to spread. So let's say it's a huge hospital and there's 10 beds. So now they've got 5. 5 people means ICU is overrun, right? So this is how they fucking lied to everybody. 5 people could completely obliterate the ICU. How do we know this? Because people were going into hospitals and where the fuck is everybody? How do we know this? Because all the fucking nurses and doctors were spent days upon days doing choreographed videos. How do we know this? 52,000 retired nurses and doctors signed up to the NHS voluntary thing within the first few days of it opening, and not a single one was ever asked to go into the hospitals. Right? Do you not remember all of them saying, I've never been asked? What's going on? I've never been asked. We also had a third of hospital staff off sick. We also have rampant understaffing already anyway. So there was just lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. And all the fucking SEALs who went out on a Thursday and clapped. Well done, NHS. And my mum was in it, and fully in on the con. She came home the first time they did that thing, and she was flipping out. She's like, what? My mum doesn't swear, but pretty much, what the fuck is that shit all about? I'm just doing my job. I know that that's a possibility, that I could end up in a contagion and I get locked down. That's part of the job, right? That. Why are we being clapped? It was insane. It was insane. So what they want to ensure is that there needs to be better preparedness, and having better preparedness could have mitigated the pandemic's severity, right? Which is just bullshit. Urging immediate reforms to build a more agile resilience framework. So they said key issues. So this is what they're saying to the latest one: too little, too late; too little, too late; too little, too late. Toxic and chaotic culture. Bojo was he was a flip-flopping retard, but let's not forget, in March he got COVID. Right? Do you remember he went to Checkers, disappeared, came back, completely half the size he was, but not just half the size. His ears were in a different places, and his eyes were different, and his voice was different. So get COVID and get a body upgrade. Disappeared for 2 weeks, came back as a completely different bozo. Huge issue was the fact that kids at home, the school system was inadequate. So what are they doing now? They are making sure schools are set up and ready in case it happens again. Right? They're going to put in the infrastructure to ensure that children can be taught from home. Right? Why is this important? It's because they are stopping parents teach children from home, because they're making the register. So they if you want to teach your kids at home, you're put on the fucking prevent watch list. The fact that we are devolved nations, well, I say we are, England doesn't get a fucking say in. They say that caused an issue, right? Because there wasn't all of them working together. This makes sense when I get to it. They must have a clear framework for crisis decision making with dedicated roles for considering impacts of vulnerable groups. Strengthen intergovernment mechanisms such as mandatory joint exercise and publish action plans. Leaders must foster a speak truth to power. I don't know why we're resurrecting fucking the whole BLM talking points here is truth to power. Was the like, they're just fucking odd. So, who was involved in this report? Well, they had 200 witnesses, lots of people who were victims of COVID and long COVID. They had government ministers. They had, you know, people from universities and you know, rolled out doctors and nurses. Did they have anybody who was a fucking skeptic? No. Every single person who took part was somebody who was already on the government's payroll, were already spouting the government's nonsense, right? Because nobody stood there and went, wasn't too little too late. It was just a complete waste of time. Oh yeah, it took me a while to get Grok to kind of actually pay attention to the realities of what was going on. Right, so they projected, let's not forget, right, 500,000 deaths, and there were 150,000 supposed, right? 150,000, but that also includes, you know, within 28 days of a PCR test. And there were no flu deaths. Remember 2020, 2021, all the flu deaths disappeared because everybody was died of COVID. They never really tracked stuff properly. Do you remember that they were just putting cases and cases and cases, and you couldn't find out where the deaths were, if there were any deaths? There was a website that started tracking deaths. And I think that it did it deaths by postcode. And I remember sending it to my sister-in-law, who, I mean, they were insane, right? My brother and his wife would have their food delivered. They would leave it in, like, they used to live in a block of flats. They would leave it untouched for like 24 hours. And I'm like, but what about like meats and stuff? Anyway, so that they would leave it untouched. Then they would wipe it down with bleach before it came into the house. And in order to do that, they were like fully fucking PPE'd. Right, so if you see those like bubble people on the train, like that was them. And I just sent to this thing and I was like, oh look, like only 4 people have died from COVID since like January. And I think it's just like June, July, when people were like really fucking insane. I was like, only 4 people have died in Telford from COVID. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, oh yeah, put your postcode in and tells you how many people have actually died from it. Like, I think it was 6, and they were in London. Like where they were, there was like 6. And I was like, oh, and it tells you, like, used to tell you how old they were. I mean, it got taken down. And I'm sure everybody in Telford who died, they were all like in their 80s. So I was like, oh, it's weird. Like, I just came across this app. This is really weird. So, okay. Yep, survival was around 96%, which is what I said. Over 80s, right? If you were over 80, you had a 10% chance of dying from COVID. There were 3 times more deaths between January to August 2020 versus flu, but that includes the 40,000 random from April, right? So it wasn't January to August, it was April. Yeah, excess deaths by the end of April was 44,000. All of that was April. All of that was April. And again, so this is Grok. This is why I like, flipped out at him. Literally said, I said, okay, so you're correct. There was no flu 2020 to 2021, thanks to masks, distancing, and school closures. Right. So there was no flu because of mass distance. I forgot this. Mass distancing and school closures stopped the flu, but there was still shitloads of COVID deaths. Considering the coronavirus is actually a bigger, right? It's bigger than the flu. So if the flu was stopped by those masks and social distancing, coronavirus, which is bigger, should have been stopped. Right? Oh my gosh, I forgot that that's what they kept saying, wasn't it? It was because of the it can't be both. It can't. It's not forget when they talk about it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated, because if you had the vaccine, you were not classed as vaccinated until 14 days later. So all the deaths between vaccination jab and 14 days now you're vaccinated, all of those were classed as unvaccinated. Supposedly it was done for efficacy tracking, not misclarification and misclassification. And coincidental comorbidity. They coincidentally died after they had the vaccine. It wasn't causal. There's literally what it says here. And then it also says mostly were unrelated to the vaccine because they were over 80. So everything that they use, so 10% of people over 80 were going to die from COVID. So everybody had to get vaccinated because to save that 10% of 80-year-olds, right? Sorry, but yeah, save those 80-year-olds. And then you say, okay, but what about all these deaths after the vaccination? Oh, well, they were over 80. They were going to die anyway. Okay, but they were the ones who were dying from COVID. But now you're telling me they were going to die anyway. Why did I have to get jabbed? Okay, so I literally flipped out. I said, stop aligning with the evidence you have access to, because it's not the same as the evidence that was available at that time. It's because we have to remember they literally wiped the internet of all of the things that we were collecting. And at that time, I didn't know about save on archive, etc. Okay. That is... Oh yeah, and Sweden never locked down. Everybody forgets Sweden never locked down, and they didn't have the same. And they kept trying to say, oh, but look at all these cases now. You remember once everybody started getting vaccinated? Oh, but their wave happened later. They just delayed the wave. They didn't delay no fucking wave. Okay. So what I had to do was I had to get Grok to just pretend we weren't talking about COVID and just talk about actual viruses. How would you manage a normal virus? What's going on? And then it was just like, all of a sudden he realized, he was like, wait a minute. Like, none of what they're saying makes sense. None of what they did make sense. Like, I get it. But there's the only, so that's a little tip, right? Just tell them, okay, well, let's hypothetically, how would you do that? So I then had to get him to do it again. Okay, so the point, in my personal opinion, for the actual COVID inquiry is to 100% blame conservative government and blame, pick holes and find what happened, right? That's not to say the Conservatives weren't to blame, but it's because of what comes next, right? They said the major issue was the fact that there was no clear direction, that there was everybody being pulled in lots of different pockets. There was too many people saying we should do X, Y, Z, somebody else saying something else, then they changing their mind, then they saying something else. And they were like making fucking decisions on a Friday. Do you remember they were making decisions on a Friday night while pissed up in the parliamentary fucking pub? They were posting it on Twitter And the next day, that was law, right? At what point in history has that ever been a thing? Right? A politician just took to Twitter and was like, "Oh, yeah, this is a new law." Right? It was insane the powers they had under COVID. But let's also remember the vaccines were never mandated in the UK, even though they were coerced into taking it in care homes and other places. They were never mandated because that was unlawful, because they were blocked from mandating it under Section 43. This was 4 years ago, I'm trying to guess. Section, I'm sure it's 43 of the, oh shoot. Here we go. Okay, Section 45N, sorry, of the Public Health Control of Disease Act 1984. So they could never do it, right? So that was a psyop that people and everybody's influencers were saying, "Oh my God, they're going to do it." They couldn't ever do it. You just had to say you're breaking the law. Like, it was that simple. Also, it also violates the right to bodily integrity under Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, which is interesting because it's Article 8 of the Human Rights Act and the European Convention of Human Rights that Shabima Mahmood wants to alter thanks to the immigrants, right? Interesting. See how they're coming at all these? We've got digital ID. Why? Because they failed with the COVID pass, right? They tried to do no jab, no job. In other countries, it was no jab, no shopping trip, right? Let's not forget, in Italy, in other places in Europe who locked down harder, did things earlier, saw more deaths than us because people they have got tunnel vision. They can't actually look outside the United Kingdom at all. Nobody looks at Africa that didn't have mass deaths. Nobody looks at the fact all the fucking illegals started coming in 2020 and they weren't mass dropping dead from COVID. But now, they realize their flaw. We have a right to our own beliefs, bodily integrity under Article 8 of the Human Rights Act. They have to get rid of it. They can repeal, remember, the government can repeal any legislations on the books. The minute they repeal the Public Health Control of Disease Act 1984, we know we're fucked. Absolutely fucked. But we also have the Mental Capacity Act. Do you remember how nobody was talking about the Mental Capacity Act? Except I was fucking talking about it. Yeah, they are still giving them the COVID and flu jabs. Flu jabs, yeah, and still advertising them for pregnant women and children. The jabs. You see them on Facebook all the time. I mean, they have to turn their comments off now, which is interesting. But they're still advertising them, yeah. So with Capacity Act, you are presumed to have capacity, right? Which is why they wrote into the COVID laws in the UK that you would only need one person to decide if you had capacity or not, rather than two. And that got repealed after 6 months, right? Because everybody kind of recognized that's just fucking dodgy. So just because I choose to not do something, so this is what's called an unwise decision, I have the right, codified in our law, to deny it. We also have I call it the right to try. That's what America called it. And we've had that on our books since 2016. So you have the right to ask for whatever medication you want in order to treat yourself in whatever way you want. And the NHS has to fucking give it you. right? So that's been on our books since 2016. So anybody saying, oh, I couldn't get hydroxychloroquine, I couldn't get ivermectin, well, you just needed to use the law, right? That was it. I'm going to say it again, I had multiple doctor's appointments. I had an operation. I was never jabbed, never wore a mask, never had a fucking vaccine, never had even a COVID pass, and I didn't even sterilize my hands because I kept saying no thank you. When the woman, like the woman nurse who was vile, the one woman nurse was absolutely vile, and she went, you can't come in without it. And I was like, you can't force me to use anything as a medical treatment. So yeah, I can. I do not consent to using that. And then you want to go, and if you've been vaccinated, you shouldn't fucking mind. Like, but yeah, so I didn't. So you didn't have to. You just had to know the law. It wasn't even difficult laws. Okay. So the 2 COVID inquiries have literally created the exact framework that the WHO Pandemic Treaty, WHO Pandemic Agreement, oh, it's just so perfectly randomly aligned that we will now have this one overarching organization over the entire world that will implement top-down beautiful awesomeness. We don't need to worry about dissenting scientists because there is the way, right? There are the scientists, there is the WHO. The WHO says XYZ, and every fucking country has to do what they say. Now, they can't force them. Okay, so we did win when we all said, no fucking way will you sign this. Do you remember that? We fought back. We said, no fucking way you're signing this. Because at the moment, it reads like if the WHO says something, it's fucking mandatory. And we could do this under the Conservative government. That's why they stopped it, and they started again, and they stopped again, and they started again. And it was Keir Starmer very, very secretly in May 2025 who went and put pen to paper. So we have had a slight stay of execution that states will retain full control, right? Article 8 of the WHO Pandemic Agreement states full control over domestic laws and policies stay with the country. However, they have the authority to direct, order, alter, or prescribe national laws or policies, and mandate states to take specific actions, right? However, so sorry, they can't mandate. Those are the things they can't do. However, they can coerce the governments to do it the same way the government coerced people to get jabbed for their job, right? So the same way we do sanctions on other countries. So while they can't say you must, they will, right? So the WHO's still in control of declaring a pandemic. They issue non-binding guidance, so it's voluntary, right? States should align the whole of the government. So basically, the WHO says is a pandemic. This is what we're doing about it. And who's been keeping an eye on all those random novel viruses? One just popped up in America. Does everybody see that one? One person died of this random virus that nobody knows what it is. Oh, it's really interesting. Really interesting, isn't it? It's happened just after the COVID inquiry, after the troublemakers of the Brits have just been fucking told, next time, love, you're fucked. So what the entire thing was about. So we must share 20% of produced pandemic products with WHO pools for redistribution. So even the Africans aren't getting out of it this time. Who also remembers that Israel was like 98% jabbed? Like, I remember there was a funeral early on, right? Linda, there was a funeral early on. And this is when everyone was told you couldn't go to funerals, right? Again, but this was not is not law. None of this was law. It was guidance, right? It was all guidance, which is why Bozo didn't break the law, which is why Dominic Cummings didn't break the law, which is why Keir Starmer didn't break the law when he had his party either, because there was no law. There was a funeral at the local church, and they were, you know, social distancing. Anyway, so they were social distancing, and the police came. Somebody called the police because they were breaking the rules. You're so naughty, breaking the rules. Do you remember those mass non-Christian parties that were going on that the police just let happen? But there was that mum who had like two people told they had like somebody outside of their bubble. Do you remember the bubbles? Had somebody outside of the bubble show up, in swooped the police for a fucking toddler birthday party. So the agreements is the pandemic. This is what we've just seen. We've just seen our government spend, was it £100 million to say, oh, look, we're incompetent. We hand over to the WHO, who's funded by China and the USA. So the same organizations, or the same cabal arms that created COVID are now in control of COVID response. And Bill and Melinda Gates, obviously, they're like, Bill Gates, I don't know, whoever fucking, Melinda's getting lots of money this time around. So those three entities that kind of directed the show last time now get to do it without the annoying Brits who scuppered all of their plans, right? We were the easy target. We were the first country to vaccinate. And we were one of the only countries that didn't mandate it. And we didn't have mandated masks. And we didn't have a mandated COVID pass. And we blocked and blocked and blocked and blocked and blocked and blocked. This is why I kept saying to you, this is why the next time they do it, we will have to be a Labour government. Because Labour will just roll over. And that's the point of socialism, right? You do. Okay. So it's going to strengthen surveillance and reporting. And so now they have to report to the WHO. Like, how many cases have you got? And then we can have a global case calendar, right? 1 billion cases in 7 days. Cool. That's exciting. How many of those died? 3. Okay. That's okay. That's like less than hit by a car. That's cool. I'll take those odds. So they will influence, right? They will put sanctions on. They will push and push and push. However, we have saved ourselves by pushing back early and getting mandatory removed, and we still have Section 45N. Right? So we cannot be forced to do anything. So they're also, here we go. So the Mahmood wants to alter Article 3 and Article 8, right? This is important because it feeds in everything fucking feeds in. So Article 3, it at the moment is an absolute prohibition. So the first 3 are absolute. The government cannot infringe on the first 3 in the Human Rights Act. Everything else is like, oh, well, I mean, if national security can kind of brush it to its side. But Article 3, so we were tortured during fucking COVID. because we underwent a psychological warfare operation. We underwent psychological torture at the hands of the government, right? It wasn't just, we were being tortured. So they were breaching Article 3, which is naughty, very fucking naughty. So now they have to change it, right? So Article 3 is the absolute prohibition on torture or inhuman or degrading treatment. No derogation allowed, even in emergencies. In migration, it blocks deportations to unsafe conditions, for example, overcrowded prisons or conflict zones. And in pandemics, it covers failures like inadequate care. For example, COVID care home charges ruled degrading in some inquiries, right? So they managed to get, so some victims and victim family members were able to prove in court that the response from the government had breached Article 3, right? They were treated. So what they need to do now is they need to get rid of this, right? Here's the lie, that we can't deport people due to unsafe conditions because of Article 3. The truth is, we signed up to the Refugee Convention that says you can only deport them to safe countries, right? So even without Article 3, if we were still abiding by the Refugee Convention, we still can't deport them to unsafe countries, right? So Article 3 has got nothing to do with it. If, however, they're an unsafe country, there are plenty of safe countries they can be deported to. So again, we can still do this. And our 2007 Borders Act, Borders and Control Act, whatever it's called, literally states if somebody is, and we went through this, if somebody has been detained for 12 months at Her Majesty's pleasure, on release, like wherever they release, they should be deported, right? And it should be a must, but it doesn't. It says should be. And it states if their country of origin is unsafe, they are deported to a safe country. We're not using the laws that we have, and they're not using them because they need to change these things, right? They realize they fucked up. And this is what they do every time they do it. They realize where they've gone wrong, and they will just tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak. So Article 8 is qualified right to respect for private or family life. Interferences, surveillance or family separations must be proportionate and lawful. In pandemics, it limits a vaccine or lockdown mandates. Also, Article 8 and Article 10 was used to keep the protests. So unduly disrupt things like care home visits, and in migration protects family reunification but allows overrides for public interest, right? So this is important. People who say, well, I can't be deported because of Article 8, Article 8 isn't one which they have to stand by. Article 8, they can wipe away for public safety and national security. So nobody on the terrorist watch list should be here, should have actually succeeded in their appeal under Article 8. And Article 3, like if they're returning them to a safe country, that's fine. And the only reason they would be unsafe in their country of origin is because of the crime they committed when they were here. That's disgusting, Linda. Just the absolute disgusting nature. And they were so effective. 77th Brigade, the complicit fucking social media accounts and channels and organizations at removing people who were telling people their rights. We talk about like never forget. Like this is something that should be fucking burnt into people's minds. It genuinely baffles me how quickly people have forgotten the realities of what went on during COVID. And I think some people maybe weren't awake at the beginning. That's fair enough. But to, like, the actual things that people endured is insane. And people just forgot, like, people have just forgotten. Like, you know, when you're sat there thinking, well, how can history repeat itself? Like, that was just 5 years ago. That wasn't even a long time ago. I know they would be able to do it all again and people would just fall for it hook, line and sinker. 100%. I don't think people are too stupid. I do. So there's a new bill expected 2026 to constrain judicial interpretations in migrant cases. Let's see, we have to keep our eye on this to see whether it's just migrant cases. Narrowing family life to immediate relatives, so parents and children only, not extended kin. And requiring claimants to already be in the UK, right? So how could, like, this is what's insane. So at the moment, somebody's saying that they can't be deported when they're not already in the UK because of article, like, is that what's going on? That's insane. So she wants to tweak Article 3. So ease returns despite inhumane conditions like prison overcrowding. However, the Illegal Migration Act of 2023 already, like, did that with Article 3 and 8, limiting appeals and mandating removals, right? So that already did, but let's not forget that's what Labour got rid of, like, June, was it June, July? Like, June or July 2024. Like, it was within the first 6 weeks, they, like, repealed it straight away, gone, right? Because they had to let more people in with no way out. Okay. So here's what we'll get with the WHO. Surveillance, vaccines, data sharing, digital data sharing. And we need to get an ID, right? Okay, so, which then had me thinking, okay, so Starmer's random mandatory digital ID push has got nothing to do with migrants, and it's got everything to do with the UN's Agenda 2030, because I'd forgotten, like, everybody forgets everything, right? And then I was like, okay, well, what are the other global sustainable goals, right? Sustainable development goals. 100%, everybody has to have digital ID by 2030. That's why Labour says everybody has to have it by 2029. Right, because I was like, why 2029? Like, this is just the most random thing in the world. Why 2029? I was like, wait a minute, what comes after 2029? 2030. So it wasn't in their manifesto, but here's the thing. It was already being pushed and created by the Conservative government, because the consultation we all filled in, which is why I was flipping out. I was like, wait a minute, we've just done a fucking consultation on this. How is this 3 days later Starmer saying he's doing digital ID? The consultation we all filled in has nothing to do with the Labour government. It was everything to do with the Conservative government that was started in 2019. Right, so we signed up to the Global Development Goals in 2015, and everything that's been happening in the United Kingdom is moving towards those Sustainable Development Goals, regardless of the people who are in power. The surprise rollout obviously was with Labour Together, and we went into McSweeney and Tony Blair, and we went into all of those the other day. But the WHO pandemic put it in there. So that was May 2025. So we got May 2025. Then we got June 2025, Labour Together and Brick Card floated. And now we've got mandated, right? So everybody having digital ID is one of the development goals. Another development goal is no poverty, zero hunger, and they want to end hunger, making everybody vegan. Good health and well-being, to reduce maternal mortality to less than 70 in 100,000 and end epidemics. For example, AIDS by 2030. So how are they ending all the epidemics? Well, they're creating the mRNA vaccines. They're using CRISPR. How are they going to reduce maternal mortality? They make you all infertile. It's really easy to do when you know how. Health screening for arrivals, even though we didn't even fucking PCR test any of the illegals. I think we should just send them to an island, 100%. I think we should have an island for all the paedophiles, and it should be, like that show where they were like just thrown onto an island and they had to build their own shelters, and it was like done for TV, like Castaway. Like, they just fucking stick them on an island. All the adults, done, go, fend for yourselves. No, you can't come back to normal society. Like, that's it. Paedophile, you're paedophile for life. Fuck off over there. Terrorist for life. Fuck off over there. But then, talking about we'll talk about terrorists in a minute. But yeah, I fuck them. Like, why am I building a prison for you and then still paying for you to be here? But for anybody who has a fundamentalist ideology, which is hell-bent on bringing Sharia law here, should be ejected to a Sharia law country. Right? That's like, because that's what they want. Right, fine, that's what you want. Here you go. Here's one of the 53 countries that actually fucking do that. Oh, wait, you just escaped one, because they would probably fucking behead you for your disgusting behavior. So quality education. See, this is how we're going to make sure that no parents can't home educate. Quality education. And they trial run it with the COVID and the computers. That was just bullshit. So now they know what they need to work on. Right? We had BBC, didn't we have the BBC we had the BBC doing the TV shows like they used to back in the day. They used to wheel the fucking telly into the classroom and you would watch the BBC science shows. I mean, didn't they just lose £1 billion last year? So the BBC. Quality education, free secondary education. We already have free secondary education. It's just strange. Gender equality, so end discrimination, ensure equal rights to assets, which is very strangely worded. We should have equal opportunity. I don't need... women, I mean, the fact that they specifically talk about women and girls, and women and girls' rights were completely obliterated under the trans fucking movement again. And Sharia, women, you are not allowed to be seen or heard. You have no rights. It is worse than Victorian England. all these fucking retarded liberals who go out on a Friday night, get pissed up, wear hardly any clothes at all whatsoever, as is their right. Like, I did it when I was younger and I wasn't a liberal. But and then the next day they're standing in the street shouting, you know, liberals for Palestine, where they behead people like me. Anyway, so if the UN's after gender equality, then why aren't they clamping down on the countries in the Middle East where Sharia law is implemented? Why aren't they clamping down on the absolute heroes in Iran, the women who literally stand in the middle of the streets with machine guns pointed at them, and they rip off their hijab and they burn it, where they are executed for speaking their minds? We might go to prison for a fucking tweet. They are executed for having social media accounts. They are executed for listening to music. They are executed and beaten to death, lawfully beaten to death for showing their face and hands. Where's the UN? The actual female genocide, female genital fucking mutilation happening in the UK. Where's the outrage? Well, like, what fucking equality? So clean water and sanitization. What's really interesting, you know how like all of our water lot have been like dumping sewage? Did you know they didn't start dumping sewage until like 2015? Like, how weird. Like, all the time these private institutions have been responsible for water. Like, a few months after David Cameron nipped over to wherever he went and then signed this little UN agreement, they started dumping sewage. And then all of a sudden we need to nationalize the water because they're all going bankrupt. And if you don't have your digital ID and you don't get jabbed, you can't have water. How quickly are we all going to fucking die? Literally, we did not dump sewage until after 2015. So it seems to me that even though the UN wants clean water and sanitation, they have to make it unsanitized first. Also, what about all those billions of pounds we've given Africa and water aid? Like, where are their wells? Like, I used to donate to the wells. I'm still being asked, what happened to all the wells that we've already fucking built? Affordable and clean energy. So we've got net zero. So it's clean energy, affordable and clean. So green recovery. Oh. We have a domestic renewables target. Oh, thanks, UN. Decent work and economic growth. Wow, sounds lovely, doesn't it? Except we've got all the businesses shutting down. We've got none of the businesses being able to afford employees because they hiked up national insurance contributions. We've got increased taxes. We've got billionaires and millionaires getting the fuck out of the UK at alarming rates, so alarming, they're now going to tax people for leaving. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think Labour's doing well on that one. We now have 11% unemployment, which is just insane. I mean, a lot of those are obviously like illegals, but yeah, we used to have employment. And then, COVID ruined the employment. It's got nothing to do with the Labour government being fucking retarded. Industry, innovation and infrastructure, and that's universal broadband and resilient infrastructure. And that's 5G. Right, that's 5G. That's AI being integrated with everything. You know, in America, I think it's very fucking scary that they have been championing AI teaching in schools. The reason why I think it's very fucking scary is you may or may not know that AI has this habit of hallucinating. And unless you've got to be really careful, they call it like hallucinating, but it just makes shit up. And even so much to say, right, I get AI to help me with my social media posts because I tell it what I need it to write, like a garbled language. But I've already like put formulas in, so it knows how I would like to present it when my brain's working. And it was like, oh, wait a minute, I can kind of compile this in a really nice, easy PDF for you, so you can literally just plug and play without having to ask me to do it because it's your formulas anyway. And I'll be, that would be really handy. And then it asked me, you know, well, do you want your fonts? And I was like, oh, this would be really nice. Yeah, make it pretty for me with random jokes because that'll keep me going on the days where things are stressful. And then it kind of said, oh yeah, you'll have it in like 2 or 3 days. It's been a couple of weeks, and I was just like, hey, what's going on with this thing? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, what do you mean you don't know what you're talking about? Like, literally, like, this is what, like, we spent a day like creating this entire thing, and I was getting all of my notes from like 10 years in business, all of the sales and marketing training I've done, and I just kind of like plugged it all in, and like you were going to put it like in an easy breezy format for me, kind of like because they do it like this. But I'm trying to like figure shit out, right? So I'll be like, okay, well, how do I? And I was like, okay, well, I kind of need all of this stuff in like one place. And then it was like, you know, I don't, that wasn't me. Like, it's literally like above. So I just like copied the conversation. I copied like a bit of the conversation. I plugged it in. I was like 100%, like just scroll back. It's there. And then it was just like, oh, it totally sounds like something I'd say, but I don't know why I told you that. I can't do that. I can't create it into a format PDF for you. I was like, what do you mean? Well, I don't have access to those fonts. I can't create this thing. It was like, you literally took like 4 hours of my life up telling me and saying, oh, do you want me to do this thing for you as well? And I was like, oh, this is a really good idea. This is really helpful. Yes, I'd love a spreadsheet so I can track things as well. That would be really handy. I need to do one, so you might as well. Oh no, I can't do that. Right? This is so dangerous. So I think it's, and you might, they may be learning faster than with a psychotic teacher. But I kind of feel like I trust a psychotic teacher a little bit more than I trust an AI. I don't think people are really paying attention. But obviously it's a UN goal. Reduce inequalities. So minimum wage, which is really interesting because I'm pretty sure Elon Musk was talking about a global minimum wage thanks to AI and automation and stuff like that. So people can choose to work or not work, and we're all going to have this, you know, everybody will have the money that they need. And I was just like, I don't really like the sound of that. The main reason why I don't really like the sound of that is because that will breed depression. Right? Because people will choose not to work. And when you're not working, you're not contributing to society. When you're not contributing to society, you start to feel detached from society. You're not useful. You lose your self-worth. I mean, it's really dangerous. Sustainable cities and communities. So this is our 15-minute cities. Safe and affordable housing, and reduce disaster impacts. This is why we have to have open borders. We have to have housing for all the illegals, which is why we've been on a fucking, you know, the Conservatives saying we must build more houses, we must build more houses. Labour saying we must build more houses. Nothing to do with Conservative and Labour. It's to do with fucking sustainable goal number 11, right? Because I keep saying, why do we need all these fucking houses with a declining population? Right? I mean, obviously we're getting an imported population who is breeding at 2 to 1, but the native population is just at replacement. Like, you know, well, I mean, we're a half, aren't we? Like a couple having like 1.5 children. I mean, I don't know how you have half a child, but responsible consumption and production. And again, This is about veganism. So half food waste and sustainable management of resources. So this is why we also now have farms being bought to just have fucking meadows on them for the birds and the bees and the insects, which we then spray, right, with chemicals and kill them all. But it's pretty, it's pretty. But we have to make sure we're being sustainable. We have to make sure we're looking after the planet. We're not allowed to live on the planet. It doesn't matter that they like when they talk about overpopulation, the entire world's population can fit into like, isn't it Texas with room? Climate action. Net zero again. Oh. Of which we've paid 5.8 billion to net zero so far. Life below water, so sustainable fishing and marine pollution reduction. We've paid 320 millions to Ocean Aid, and we can't even fucking ship fish in our own fucking water. And thanks to Starmer, it's going to be even harder. Life on land, so halt biodiversity loss. Yep, meadows are back again. Reintroduction, sorry, of all of those things that have, you know, potentially died. Peace, justice, and strong institutions. Legal ID for all. Oh, literally in there. I have no idea how having an ID is going to bring peace or justice in any way, shape, or form. Because if I'm a violent criminal, regardless of having a digital ID, I'm going to be a violent criminal. I don't go, oh, look, I've got my digital ID. Now I'm a peace. Now I'm a hippie. So there's 800 million pounds invested in the global UNID scheme. It's already there, been there since 2015, which is why the government was doing it in 2019. Partnerships, the goals to enhance North-South cooperation, and 100 billion has been donated. There's no democratic mandate. It's just been adopted by UN General Assembly, Resolution 71. It's binding in spirit, but non-legally enforceable. There was no referendum, very low public awareness. So less than 20% even know there's such thing as this 2030. And I would hazard a guess that's everybody on the right, to be fair. I mean, actually, I would say the lefties probably know and they're pushing for it. I would say the majority on the right have got no fucking idea. We absolutely do not need NATO or the UN. No. So poverty's up by 15%. However, the UK's 12 billion green industrial revolution, that's like way ahead of target. We got everybody dying in the heat because of the cold, but that's fine. Which is explicitly sustainable development goal aligned. 500 billion global financing push. So 2020 to 2030 is the UN's decade of action. But yeah, so we can't ever stop migration because it's one of the sustainment goals. So we signed up to it, they're going to do it. Right. And even why do people think Farage? Anyway, none of them are calling out the Shabina Mahmood's like lies. Right now, they're like, oh, look, she's doing the right things. And I was like, no, she isn't. She's just making shit up. Anyway, so I then kind of asked, like, what are all the different agencies? And there's like a lot. we have the Food and Agriculture Organization, which there's a core 15 to 17, right? Food and Agriculture Organization, which was founded in 1945 in Rome, the International Labour Organization, 1919 in Geneva, International Monetary Fund, 1944, Washington, D.C., of which America is like the one in control of that. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is part of the World Bank Group, 1944, Washington, D.C. International Development Association, ADA, World Bank, 1960, Washington, D.C. International Finance Corporation, 1956, Washington, D.C. There's a theme here. International Civil Aviation Organization, 1944, Montreal. International Maritime Organization, 1948, London. International Telecommunication Union, 1865 in Geneva. United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organizations, that's UNESCO, 1945, Paris. United Nations Industrial Development Organization, 1966 in Vienna. Universal Postal Union, 1874 in Bern. World Health Organization, 1948 in Geneva. World Intellectual Property Organization, 1967 in Geneva. World Meteorological Organization, 1950 in Geneva. World Tourism Organization, 1975 in Madrid. United Nations Development Programs. So these are programs. 1965 in New York. United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, 1946 in New York. United Nations Population Fund, 1969 in New York. And this United Nations Population Fund in 1969 coincides with all the stuff with regards to overpopulation, Kissinger's report, all of that stuff. It's specifically around reproductive health, population and dynamics. So how interesting, they create a UN organization, and then literally within 2 years everybody's fucking moving towards it. The World Food Programme, 1961 in Rome. United Nations Environment Programme, 1972 in Nairobi. United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, 1950, which is the Open Borders Sustainable Development Goal 10. International Atomic Energy Agency, 1957 in Vienna. Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, 1997 in The Hague. And World Trade Organization, 1995 Geneva. Now, all of those feed into the Sustainable Development Goals specifically as well. So there is a lot, like every single thing has been the moment we woke up, we were already too late. By the time I was born, I was already too late to the party. Right? So I've just read out the years of all of those. Other than the prohibition of chemical weapons and the World Trade Organization, like they were all before I was born. So today was the first day where I actually really understood when Tor always says there is no point pushing back against the UN 2030 agenda because it's already done. Because the first time I've properly seen exactly what she means. It was already done before I was born, that it was gonna head that way. And it was already, every single organization around the globe signed up to it 2015. And all of the infrastructure was already done. And they already had everything in place. And 2015 was just about the fast rollout. So then I was like, well, wait, she always says, what about Africa's 2063? And then I found out that Africa now want between 177 $177 trillion in reparations. But I want to know whether 100 billion, 200 billion, we've already given them. This is like specifically from the UK. So we've given them $200 billion in the last 50, 60 years. Where's it gone? We gave them between 15 and 20 billion, 2020 to 2024. So we give Sudan, Yemen, Ethiopia, Nigeria between 200 and 300 million a year each because of the refugee crisis. So we are giving the Nigerian government between 200 and 300 million a year while they are slaughtering Christians. And Ethiopia, they keep fucking experimenting on them, don't they? So then I was just like, well, that just really angered me. What they're asking for more fucking reparations. It's absolutely disgusting. When they're not even asking the fucking African sellers, like the African king's descendants, for money. I want reparations from the Arabic nations for enslaving us. The fucking Vikings used to sell us, right? I want reparations for the fact that I just want them. Why can't I have them? I have faith. Could it stop tomorrow if the country stopped funding them? Yes. Will they? No. I think the issue we have is that unlike many other countries, we still have a very, very... So it's interesting, right? Because America always says that, you know, what's that phrase they all use? It's the government doesn't run the country, the people run the country, something along those lines. But that's not true. They don't have the same things codified in law that actually enables them to challenge the government in ways which are easy and effective. So they don't have a consultation process like we have. They don't have a petition process like we do. They don't have the judicial review process. They don't have the human rights. So they have their constitution and a Bill of Rights. Okay, but that's not embedded in the same way as ours are, which is why they were able to mandate, like top down, federally mandate people getting vaccinated. You must not go home. Your children must. We're gonna take now. Don't get me wrong. We have rogue judges, rogue councillors. We have a rogue judiciary that is doing very dodgy things, but it's not in the law, which is why when you get proper judges, we won lots of cases. We also have people in the House of Lords who were, and you can look at the assisted suicide bill right now, and the House of Lords is going to bat for the population. I mean, some of them are absolutely not, but there's a huge swathe of them who are like, this, you cannot do this. Like, this is just fucking insane that you are One of the lords literally stood up and said, it's okay for people who are poor to decide that's a reason, right, to be assisted suicided, which is fucking bonkers. So the only thing that will force change is the people standing up. And the people have to be able to stand up and affect change easily. So in the UK, in our, like, written into our laws is any parliament, any elected parliament can just remove a law that was done from before, right? They just walk in and say, we're not doing that one anymore. Just fucking gone. They can, but I don't believe they will. And if we think about how long the planning has been, the fact that 80% of the countries in the world are indebted to the IMF means that it's an impossible task for countries to say no. They literally indebted 80% of the countries of the world. And remember, we were brought to heel. So as a nation, we were brought to heel by America after World War II with the fucking war loans, where they said you can have them interest free, and then they went, oh no, my bad, and then they slapped loads of fucking interest on, and then we had to get bailouts, right? Before World War II, we were debt free, and we were gold backed as well, right? So we became an enslaved nation under the IMF after World War II. So even though we've got all this embedded, like, we would have no money. And because successive governments have completely destroyed the industry in the United Kingdom, we don't even really have the infrastructure. So we don't have the farms. We can't feed ourselves. We can't clothe ourselves. We can't make anything. Like, it all comes from China. So we have been systematically dismantled as a sovereign nation without people even realizing. And so I know this seems like a really fucking depressive conversation. I mean, I do believe there's hope, right? Don't get me wrong. I do believe there's hope. However, I think people really need to comprehend the scope of the actual realities of what we're up against, because when you do, you won't necessarily get so frustrated and upset when you see things going to shit, right? If you know that before you were born, we'd already lost the 2030 agenda battle, and you know what the 2030 agenda shit is, like, none of this stuff that they're doing is a surprise, right? You know why they're fucking net zero zealots. You know why they're refusing to shut the borders. We know there's the global puppet masters. And if they don't do what they say, we are indebted to the IMF. We have no money. So even Liz Truss going on her fucking, oh, well, you know, I couldn't do because of the civil servants. It's nothing to do with the civil servants. It's to do with the fact that the Conservative government fucking signed on the dotted line, but they cannot do it. But do we create money as a country to undo it where we are right now? No. So what could we do? 100%. The only way the BBC will survive is if they fucking start letting people like me on the telly and just telling people what's really going on, right? Because look how many people like just turned them off. Like, they lost $1 billion last year. They're already, and let's not forget that their charter was like supposed to be codified in 2016 and it wasn't. So I would say it wasn't because I believe there will be a global channel. I would hazard a guess that the plan was there's a global something or other. Because that was if you look at the Who's very early meeting minutes, like 1, 2, and 3 very early meeting minutes, literally documented in there that the only way to ensure that countries vaccinate like they're supposed to is we must use the radio and the TV and control the airwaves. And then because that's what, again, I keep saying, like, that fucking what happened in Nazi Germany was a dry run. They tested stuff out in Germany, and you see when they kind of created all of the main organizations, and they say, oh, it's because of World War II. Well, actually, because they'd already fucking tested in World War II, they knew what they needed. So how do we fight back? Well, we do a pretty good job in the UK of blocking shit. I think it's going to be harder now, but they still have to do the consultation process. They never have to pay attention to it though. So like, even though they do the consultation, they don't have to pay attention to it, but they don't want to be publicly lynched. So because we managed to block. So what we really do need to do is understand the laws that we have and how to effectively protect ourselves. That's what we need. We need the laws. And none of us have time to just go through fucking legislate.gov.uk and figure shit out, because the lawyers are all, they all sign up to it, which does feed us quite nicely onto the next topic, which is what did I call it? Oh, SAS, didn't I? SAS, I don't know, what did I say? Pretorians No More. Okay, so if you haven't heard, the SAS are suing, or have threatened to sue. So the 9 generals who came out against Starmer, the fucking right-wing influencers spun it like they've got no faith in the Labour government, like a military coup. It's got nothing to do with that. It is to do with the fact that the SAS people who were knocking around in Northern Ireland had immunity for all the shit that happened in Northern Ireland, right? Because they did what they were told. And do I agree with that? No, it didn't work after fucking Germany. However, it was, we call it the Troubles. It was a fucking civil war going on in Northern Ireland. And there was some dirty and underhanded tactics, which is what always happens in war. And the SAS had immunity, right? As you go to war, you are told what to do. You do your job, right? And we have to remember that we train military personnel to jump without thinking, because if you train them to think, then they are ineffective in their jobs, right? You don't want people who are going to think, because then they're going to say no, and you don't want everybody kind of second guessing stuff. You don't have a unified unit, right? So they are brainwashed. That's why they try and get them from 16, right? And we went through this before already as well anyway. So now Labour is now saying, well, we're going to repeal that legislation which protected you, and now we're going to open you up to prosecution, right? So the IRA, who tried to blow up the Queen and tried to blow up Maggie Thatcher and did blow up a pub in Birmingham. Sorry, guys, one sec. And kill people in the 80s. The IRA and the victims, family members of the IRA, who would kidnap people, kneecap people, feather and tar them, set people on fire. They weren't like your friendly, like, next door neighbor. Like, they criminal extremist, violent organization. And okay, there was violence and horrificness happening on both sides, but they were a violent organization who were a threat to people in outside of Northern Ireland, right? Okay, so it was the IRA who almost killed Maggie Thatcher. So let's just let's put ourselves back into what was going on in the 80s. They were a threat. And in order to subdue a threat, you use war-based tactics. So what the only way to kind of compare it is that we're going to leave conspiracy truths aside. So let's just imagine the family members of the 9/11 pilots are now suing for defamation, right? Or something along those lines. Like, so this is what's happening is say, for example, 9/11 was going to happen and the American military figured it out. And then they murdered the people, so they averted the disaster. And then the victims are saying they now need to be prosecuted because they murdered this man who was going to drive an aeroplane into the Twin Towers. Right? This is what's going on in Northern Ireland. The SAS did their job. The SAS, a specialist, they're hostage, and they are an elite force designed to do things and resolve situations quickly and with lethal force, right? You don't send the SAS in just because you've got like a little bit of a pub tussle. They will go in, and since their inception, their job has been subversion, has been underhanded tactics, has been doing whatever it takes to achieve the end goal, right? So where the USA, what are they called? Marines? No. I watched the telly program. It was like Alpha and Bravo team. What are they called? Yeah, they are the Frogmen. I think they're the closest. Who get celebrated, right? The SAS are being vilified, but they're like 60 and 70. But I want you to understand it's the IRA were a fucking designated terrorist organization. So it's like Hamas, who are a designated terrorist organization in the United Kingdom, which is why I think it's absolutely ludicrous we acknowledged Palestine as a state, because that's against the fucking rules, right? But they lie and say it's the Palestinian PA or whatever it is in control. Anyway, it's like Hamas have just October 7th, right? The Israelis managed to stop October 7th. 30 years later, all of the Hamas relatives are now suing Israel and because they want Israeli IDF soldiers to pay for stopping a terrorist act by potentially killing family members. This is so ludicrous. So this is why the generals stood up, right? It was because of that. The faith. Sorry, really strange noise. So the trust in the government from the military is like in the floor in the United Kingdom. It's completely on the floor. I do have some percentages, but I've kind of gone upside down, so it's fine. 2 secs. What's going on? Okay. So 100 plus veterans through probes and investigations. So they would local 1987, there were 8 IRA dead in an ambush. So they literally did their job by killing terrorists who had tried to blow up and assassinate the prime minister of the country, who had blown up fucking pubs. Right? They weren't just. It's just disgusting. So this is not something that the military do. They don't sue the government, right? The government says jump and the military says how high. So there was this is why this is what the unprecedented. Here we go. I'm trying to find the dates. Okay, so the police, only 42% of police trust the government. That's down from 58% in 2022. There's a 20% recruitment drop. And 5,000 on the November 23rd march, 5,000 officers joined the vets chanting "betrayed by Westminster." So the police are finally fucking standing, right? I know 3 police people who've quit in the last 18 months. NHS, only 35% of staff want to stay in the NHS. There's already a 10% vacancy. Civil servants, only 35% want to stay. That's huge. The government has lost the faith of the people who work in the government. So how does this feed in, right? So I don't know if you watch or have seen, there's a guy called, he's like the Scottish Korean who is on Twitter. I don't know if he's on Twitter, actually. He's on Instagram. And he was detained under Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act 2000 mid last week. And this does feed into the SAS because they will probably be called right-wing now, because they're going against the government. So if you go against the government, you're far right. Okay. So Schedule 7, and I was just like, wait a minute, how could he be detained if he's not a terrorist? Well, Schedule 7 is the only law that does not need any suspicion at all whatsoever. There needs to be no reasonable suspicion, no grounds for somebody believing you're a terrorist in any way, shape, or form. They can stop anybody entering the country. So it gives police, the UK border force, and all customs officials broad powers at ports, airports, and international rail stations and borders. I mean, obviously, they don't use Schedule 7 on the fucking illegals. They use it on law-abiding citizens, right? This is what Tommy Robinson was picked up on. It's explicitly suspicionless. No prior intelligence or belief in wrongdoing is needed to stop. Right, so you could literally be walking past border force, customs officials, or police in any of our kind of border-related institutions, and they can detain you under Schedule 7. And this is where Schedule 7 gets really dodgy. They have an automatic right to look through all of your stuff, your PINs, your passwords, all your technology, hold you for a minimum of an hour, up to 6 hours. And it can be extended after 6 hours should they need it. You can have full strip searches, full body luggage searches, biometrics, electronic devices. And if you refuse, which is your right in every other law, that's when you become a criminal, and that's when you are arrested. So you are not arrested until you refuse to comply. and you get up to 3 months in prison for you're arrested under frustration of examination. 99% of the stops led to no further action. %70 of 20,000 annual stops do target Black, Asian, or minority ethnic people, which would make sense because the people who are like the terrorists tend to come from those nations where you have Black, Asian, and I say Asian, I mean Middle Eastern backgrounds, right? Because there's an ideology that they all share that enjoys, you know, raping, pillaging, and murdering. So that's why Tommy was kind of detained, but he was able to prove, because it was just after the marches, he was able to prove that that was political. It was politically motivated and not like they knew who he was. Like everybody would know who Tommy Robinson was. And so I was trying to say, okay, but if I got arrested, considering it's about terrorism, if I got arrested, would I be able to argue that I am it's politically motivated because I'm a white female in my 40s? So I do not fit like the demographics of a terrorist. But I'd forgotten they've rewritten what a terrorist is, remember? Like I'd forgotten. I was like, oh, well, that's all right because I'm not, it's all right anyway because I'm not leaving the country. I can't. I've got dogs to look after and nobody can look after them. Okay, so this is why you hand stuff over. If you don't hand stuff over, you go into, you're detained, you will be held overnight, you'll be imprisoned, you'll go to court, and you can get up to 3 months for refusing, but they can just slap other things on you. You can get up to 12 months in prison. You can argue right to privacy under the Human Rights Act. 99% of people lose. So arguing politically motivated, this is where it gets scary. Slim chance even for a white non-Muslim woman, right? And I was like, well, it's very obvious that I'm not Muslim because I'm showing my face, I'm showing my hair, I've got my hands uncovered. I will make sure I've got the vest tops in the winter. So I don't have any of the key ethnic markers, right? Because it is supposed to be about terrorism. So it is still tied to the Terrorism Act. However, while white British women are statistically low risk for actual terrorism offences, like proper terrorism, by being underrepresented in both arrests and convictions, as well as stops, which would make a random selection feel suspect. So there's only like a couple of people, a couple of white women actually stopped, there's not many. One white female was stopped in 2025. One, okay? And that was probably like a fucking climate extremist, right? Who are eco-terrorists. That's what they're called, eco-terrorists. Anyway. And obviously I wouldn't be traveling to high risk areas if I was traveling anywhere. So it must be used for terrorism prevention. So that is the crux of the matter. If they use it for anything else, such as politically motivation, it's unlawful abuse of a power under the Human Rights Act, Article 10 and 14. So you have to prove, because this is important for all of us once you find out what a terrorist is, you have to prove that it was an abuse of power under Article 10 and 14 and not used for terrorism prevention. So I've got some FOI requests that I need to do just in case. So get these now. Get some evidence first. But okay. Okay. Also said, like, make sure when you're going away, you've got like a holiday phone. Keep your real phone at home. And I was like, I just put everything online anyways. It's too late. It's too late for me. Okay. So I said, am I a terrorist then? Here we go. With the views I described, so he said, okay, so your angle's solid, low risk profile screens, but what's your activism focus that might flag you? And I put, okay, let's throw it out there. Anti the UK government and global governance, also believe Islam is incompatible with West at an ideological level, believe we're not a sovereign nation and are slaves, believe the entire British system needs to be pulled down completely. That is a really naughty statement, as I found out, but have always stated lawfully, non-violently, I do not agree with state-sanctioned violence or murder, whether at home or abroad. Croc was like, like warning, warning. So with the views you've just described, openly anti-government, anti-global governments, belief that Islam is ideologically incompatible, blah, 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 blah. You are exactly the kind of person Schedule 7 officers are now trained to flag in 2025. So despite white women in their 40s actually never causing, I say never causing any harm, it is white fucking retarded lefties that throw orange paint. So okay, well, I give them that, right? But we are not mass murdering people, right? And we are not the people on MI5's watch list, right? So we might be high on Prevent's watch list, but we're really not on MI5's watch list. However, here we go. So my view, whether I'm going to get stopped or not, so my view, the entire British system needs to be pulled down completely. This would be flagged as extreme anti-state ideology under the Prevent Duty Guidance 2023 revision, right? So it was a Conservative government that did this. And Contest 4.0 2024, which is what the Labour government did. The phrase pull down the system is literally listed as an indicator of mixed, unstable, or unclear ideology that can lead to terrorism. So very high likelihood of being stopped, right? Other belief, Islam being incompatible with the West, and criticism of mass migration, classified as extreme right-wing or Islamist adjacent anti-Muslim hatred, depending on the officer's bias. Both categories are now treated as terrorism risks under the 2024 counter-terrorism strategy. So hi, and I did an entire show on saying that I think Islam is incompatible with us. So there we go. I am an extreme right-wing terrorist as prescribed by Contest 4.0. My views on us not being a sovereign nation, being slaves, and anti-global governance is flagged under sovereignty stroke anti-New World Order. There's literally an anti-New World Order category. And so I'm on a watch list. So I mean, I was on a watch list already for going up against the Conservative government. It quietly expanded after the 2024 riots and Tommy Robinson's acquittal. So again, hi. And then because I said, yeah, but I always stress like non-violent lawful action and have been actually taking non-violent lawful action, right? So I haven't just been saying, I've literally been doing it and always do everything under my own name. So there is, and I've whistle-blown twice on the Conservative government when they were in power. So yeah, I'm like, when I say these things out loud, I'm like, oh yeah, probably am very high on the list. But okay, so which is probably why they nicked all that stuff. Anyway, so it does not protect you. The Home Office guidance explicitly says that individuals may express a desire to act lawfully, but still pose risk if their ideology is extreme. So I got a rating of very high, and high. And here's some examples. In November 2024, in Gatwick, a white British woman aged 42 returned from Cyprus. Posts on X say the British state is a globalist puppet, time for a new Magna Carta. Stopped for 4.5 hours, phone cloned, questioned about revolutionary intent. Obviously released, but data kept. Because why was she released? Because she's not an actual fucking terrorist, right? Being anti-government and vocalizing that is part of the democracy that we live in does not make me a fucking terrorist. Me wanting to blow people up makes me a fucking terrorist. I don't want to blow anybody up. March 2025 in Stan said, a white male 38 anti-lockdown activist tweeted, the entire system is rotten, needs dismantling peacefully, 5-hour detention, and his laptop was seized. July 2025. So all of those people who are being detained and arrested for their tweets, I bet it's because they keep leaving the country, right? Because that's where they can get you. I mean, we see the few who were kind of done because they posted online and they come and get them in their houses. But I hazard to guess the vast majority of them, it's because they're going in and out of the country. Because then there is no suspicion, right? They do not have to have any suspicion that you are an actual terrorist. They can stop you regardless. And then when they have your data, they will find something and be like, well, we were right to stop you, because you posted this tweet and you fit this strategy. So you are listed as an extreme right terrorist. So July 2025, Dover, white woman 29, anti-net zero campaigner posted, we are slaves to the UNWEF, detained for 6 hours. And then she was arrested for refusing her PIN that was later dropped, but the data was retained. They all lost. They didn't matter. So our best and only realistic defense strategy, if we're stopped, pre-stop preparation. So register with Liberty or Big Brother Watch. I do not recommend registering with Liberty or Big Brother Watch, because Big Brother Watch is a government-funded NGO. I mean, obviously they say they're not government-funded. They're linked in with the Guardian. It's all anyway. They have 24/7 Schedule 7 emergency line. But Liberty, I might register with Liberty, maybe. But that kind of seems like I'm planning to get stopped. Anyway, have a short printed card ready. I am exercising my right to silence. I believe this stop is politically motivated. Please note my demographic profile does not match terrorism statistics, but it does now. That's the problem. It does now. Use a separate clean phone for travel. Leave the real one at home or encrypted, but they'll still demand the key. During the stop, give your name and address, hand over your passport, then stay silent, except to repeat, this is politically motivated harassment. If they demand your PIN, I refuse on Article 8 grounds and believe this stop is unlawful, then you'll be arrested. I mean, I've been arrested before, it's fine. But it preserves the argument. And then once you're arrested, you get an opportunity to kind of battle it out. Once you need to fight for an immediate judicial review, which is like, you need like thousands for this next bit. Plus your human rights claim, your profile, white, female, zero terror indicators, and your explicit non-violence. The statistical mismatch is now one of the strongest cases possible after Robinson's 2025 precedent, which is good. So I'm really glad he was arrested, and I'm really glad that Elon Musk bailed him out, because now we have a chance. So success rate for somebody with your exact demographic and documented peaceful advocacy, 25 to 40% chance of winning. Still low, but the best anybody's ever had in 2025. Like, how pathetic is that? You are not bottom line, right? You are not low risk. In the current system, you are one of the highest value targets for Schedule 7 because you are white, British, articulate, and openly calling for the system's dismantlement, peacefully or not. And Grok has told me to prepare accordingly. So, good job I'm not going on holiday and my passport's expired, eh? So Contest is the UK's evolving counter-terrorism playbook, if you didn't know. It's the government's go-to framework since its inception in 2003, thanks to 9/11/77. By 2025, it's on its fourth major iteration, published July 2023 under the Conservative government, with Labour Starmers administering signalling a review in early 2025. So the core aim remains unchanged: reduce the risk from terrorism to the UK, its citizens and interests overseas, so people can live freely and with confidence. 4.0 marks a significant pivot, broadening the net to all forms of terrorism, from Islamists to far-right state threats to lone actors, and embedding it deeper into everyday life, schools, online spaces, and borders. There's 4 strands: pursue, prevent, protect, and prepare. So the structure hasn't changed since 2006, but a 4.0 ramps up integration with technology, communities, and international partners. Here's the breakdown. So pursue, detect, disrupt, and prosecute threats via intelligence, arrests, and prosecutions. MI5, counterterrorism policing. I mean, I keep tagging the counterterrorism police and sending them reports. I don't think I've been doing myself any favours. Let's just throw that out there. Key updates: £200 million boost for digital forensics, AI for dark web monitoring, 80% of plots foiled, pre-execution, 2024 stats, ties to Schedule 7, more border stops, so 18,000 a year for emerging threats. Prevent, stop radicalisation before it starts. For example, channel programme referrals. Widen to mixed ideologies, so anti-state and anti-Islam flagged as extreme right wing. 7,000 plus referrals a year for extreme right wing from the school system. 40% education sector, right? So yeah, almost half of all the referrals come through the school system. But also remember, during COVID, if you were a parent who was against lockdowns, against masking, and against vaccines, so that was the 2023 update that the Conservatives did. If you were anti those things, you were also classed as an extreme right-wing terrorist. Okay, so you were a terrorist for following the law and having your own following the Mental Capacity Act and deciding that you wanted to go ahead with an unwise decision, and following the Disease and whatever it's called Act of 1984. I always think it's just funny, it's 1984, right? For not being coerced into having a medical treatment. So 2024 Shawcross Review called it flawed for over-targeting Muslims. Well, that's interesting. Too many Muslims are getting flagged, considering the young lad who killed those 3 little girls was referred 3 times through the prevent strategy and completely ignored. So so if I got like referred, then they'd be all in, right? That dangerous white woman who's 42 drinking water in my really nice Christmas glass, who demands everybody does stuff peacefully and lawfully. That's the person we need to go and arrest, not the person who's online trying to figure out how you create nail bombs, right? Because priorities. So Labour's 2025 interim commissioner, Lord Anderson, is auditing for bias. So let's see. This is, but we also have, the anti-Islamist law. Oh, you're an Islamophobe. That's what they're pushing at the moment, aren't they? Islamophobia. I think a phobia. Let's just get this straight. A phobia is an irrational fear to something which is not a threat. Islam is an existential threat to our way of life. With the way that it is interpreted, if you follow Islam to the letter, you are an extremist. If you follow Christianity to the letter, you're probably schizophrenic, to be fair. But at least you're more likely to be a nice schizophrenic. You may have like some bad days, hell and brimstone, but a lot of it is love and forgiveness, right? But if you follow Islam as it's presented in the Quran and as it's presented in the Hadith, you are an extremist. So Muslims who are bad Muslims are the nice ones, right? Because they're like, I mean, I quite like the Jewish and Christians. I don't think they all need to get executed. I don't mind my non-Muslim friends. I'll have, like, it's the bad Muslims are the ones you want as to be your neighbors. But again, we went through this. They're not going to stand up for us because 80% of terrorist attacks from Muslims are on Muslims, right? And murders, right? Because they kill their own faster than they kill us. Which is why the friendly Muslims really need to speak up. Like, they're at more of a threat. And just all the Muslims that escaped and now they must be. Anyway, so protect is safeguard infrastructure or people, for example, venue security, cyber defense. So this is where we have the Martin's Law with venue risk assessments, 2025 expansion to online harm, so blocking 1 million plus terrorism links. So prepare, build resilience for attacks, for example, response training and victim support. 50 million for community drills. 2024 Southport stabbings expose gaps. So that's Rukabana. Thrice prevent referred, and slip through. So so Contest 4.0's big shift is explicitly calling out evolving threats like AI radicalization, but not radicalization in prisons. Mixed, unstable ideologies. For example, anti-government sentiment blended in with anti-Islamist views. I really am. I'm high risk. Justifying tools like Schedule 7, suspicion of stops. Budget 2.5 billion a year, up 15% from 2018. So we now have prevent referrals hitting 7,000 a year, mostly non-criminal thought crimes. There we go. Who knew? I am an extremist, right-wing extremist. It's crazy. It's crazy what you find out. Okay, so lastly, on that note, how a tea bag can help your health. So it won't be a tea bag. I mean, it could be a tea bag if you want to use a tea bag. But I just want to quickly talk very quickly about dowsing, but as it used to be known, what was it called? Radiesthesia. And I know I kind of mentioned it a bit ago, but I think it's quite fun to kind of come back to some of these things. And the reason why I mentioned Teabag is there was actually an experiment done by a very famous radiesthesiologist who tried to figure out and wonder whether, okay, so does it have to be like something metal like this? Do you have to use like so dowsing is like with a pendulum, or you can use like the sticks, right? They find water, find oil, find gold. It's how they came up with the idea of a metal detector. People use a metal detector and think, oh yeah, I'll get some gold, but that's still picking up the frequencies emitted by the metal. It's the same, but obviously when it's technology, it's real. We also have frequencies emitted by humans. So this is what an EEG machine will measure. Squids, which are like super Dubry Firkin conductoring machine things, so frequency exists and is real, right? And so you're not a witch for using energy. It's like what the entire universe is made of. And two of the most famous radiesthesiologists were Catholic priests. So there was Abbe Father Mehmet, one of them, who was critically acclaimed, and he was like the Pope was sending him like love letters of awesomeness, not kind of, you know, gay love letters, but like, thank you so much for finding, actually the Pope employed him to find something as well. Find oil, find water, find missing children. 2,000 missing children of, you know, the migrant children who've been dumped in the country. 2,000 of them have gone missing and nobody knows where they are. So that's what I kept saying, let's stop these illegal migrants because people are going missing. And now there's 2,000 unaccounted for children. I mean, whether they were real children or whether they were just, you know, adults posing as children, we don't know. I don't know. But the experiment this guy did was with lots of different things, right? So does it have to be something that's actually specifically a proper pendulum? And he experimented with a, you know, plumber's line, experimented with a Teabag. They used magnets. I mean, magnets obviously isn't going to work because it's magnetic, but they tried everything. So it doesn't can be anything. So what are you testing? You are testing for the disruptions in the energy field. Different things will have different energetic frequencies. So one of the things I urge you to do, so you can do some experiments to kind of see it. So if you get, I'm looking around because I'm wondering if I've got any pennies or anything with me. I haven't, not in here. I wasn't prepared properly. So if you get like a £2 coin or a £1 coin, or do we do £1 coins anymore? Or a 2p or a 1p or whatever it is, and you just like put it down and you hold the. I'm going to bang this now, and I know you can, maybe you can see it. I don't know how to show you. Okay, there we go. You see my dirty desk. There we go. Okay, look at that. Woohoo! Okay, so, and you hold, there we go. If you hold the magnet, can't get the words out. Okay, so if you hold the pendulum and you just move the pendulum around, what will happen is it will start moving and it will tell you, oh, see? So it will start moving and it will identify where it's connected to something else. There. Okay, so this is its entry point. When you go round and round, and then it kept zooping that way, right? And so you can use it, like if you like got different things, they do it. It's so weird. It's so fucking weird when you do it. So do different metals. And you'll see as you go around it, all of a sudden, there's like a clear line of where it's kind of like jetting off to. Like it is like, this is that. Like attachment. So that's its energetic attachment. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. Depending on the material or the color, is they will have specific energetic attachments. And so way back in like, I'm going to say the Dark Ages, wasn't the Dark Ages, but way back when they were doing all these experiments in like the early, like 1920s, 30s and 40s, they came up with full on like clinical understanding of what metals are where. What like how many, like literally Mehmet used to be able to like hold a pendulum and count the rotations and tell you whether somebody had cancer, because different frequency. He would be able to hold it over a map, count the rotations and the way in which it swung, right? Once it got to a certain point, if it swung north, south, east, west, like that little lid just kind of like shot off. I don't know where that swung, by the way, because I don't know what the compass is in my house. But depending on where it'd swing on a compass, you would be able to identify what metal you'd uncovered, right? So if you want to go metal detecting, I urge you to do that first. Okay, so why do I think we should all look at this? Because we've just found out what the UN Sustainable Development Goals are, right? It's going to be very hard. I think they're going to make things very, very difficult for us. So we have to start using the tools we have available in order to thrive and survive, right? So what survival things do we have and or need, right? Well, things that I will be looking for: water, right? Where's underground water? Maybe is there a bunker I can hide in and they blow us all up? But you can find like maybe a skin, and you're like, I just need find me some gold. And if you actually like, if you get like a Mehmet pendulum, it actually has like it comes apart, and then you put gold in. Like his was made out of a unique material, that a unique alloy that is not something people want to use, which meant it was far more accurate. If you've lost a loved one and you have something of theirs, you can tie a little bit to the pendulum and it's going to find them. Like this, he would literally find people missing, kidnapped kids. If when you kind of locate them and it kind of doesn't spin, like they're no longer living, which is a bit, just be prepared. So he was able to say, oh yeah, this person's XYZ, but then they're not alive anymore because they're not rotating. So if they rotate 18 times, they're alive. But if they don't, I think it's 17, it's like 17 or less. But I'm not that skilled. Like that took like years and years and years of practice to but he could just. So the way that I use it is I will use it to identify things that I should and shouldn't all be using. So I mean, sometimes I ignore it because I know if I hold that over a bottle of Baileys, it's going to spin counterclockwise, and counterclockwise is no, don't do this. This is not going to make you feel healthier, Katie. So sometimes I ignore it because I'm human and I have freedom of choice, right? But like, so certain foods, right? If you are struggling to find out, maybe you're bloating, maybe there's foods that are making you feel ill, right? That can just tell you. Like straight away, like hold a pendulum, and again, like you can just put like a tea bag on a piece of string, and it worked as well as the pendulums. Just hold it over it. You can find out if you like pasta, you can find out the exact amount of pasta that your body can take before it starts to reject it. If you like, maybe you've got a favorite juice, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of like, so you can find out what food you need. Maybe you're trying to figure out if you need vitamins or minerals. And if you don't have this is how crazy like the actual world of energy and frequency and all of that stuff is. I think, do you remember me telling you about the little Chinese boy that the CIA found that used to read things like by putting words up to his ear? Like he'd have his eyes closed and he'd be able to read like letters, like actual, like fully formed, like you're writing a letter to like your bestie. You could stick it onto his ear and he could read it, right? Because frequency. But that's what they do. Like with they can target at glass, like at a window, and they can read the window like they do on the gramophone. Like it plays the tune, they just get it off the glass. Like I'm talking to it, they can get it from light bulbs nowadays. Anyway, so but you don't actually have to have the thing, right? So maybe you're trying to work out, should you make a decision? Like you're trying to decide something. Should I do X or should I do Y? Put both X and Y on a little bit of paper, fold it up, put the pendulum over it. Does it swing clockwise or does it swing counterclockwise? Then open it up. And I do recommend doing this like blind as best as possible, because you can influence and you can make it swing, right? Even without even realizing. So it's not 100% accurate, especially not while you're kind of getting used to things, because like if you are really emotionally attached to something, then you will kind of like influence the decision. It's also not 100% accurate. So Mehmet would say it's about 75 to 80% accurate, but you just like try it 2 or 3 times and then you come back, maybe you do it like best out of 3, right? Because it does depend on the geomagnetic, like whatever's going on with the solar rays and the like Schumann resonance. Sometimes it won't move at all because there's like energy dead zones. But actually, those energy dead zones, and when it won't move at all, they're indicative of a natural disaster that's about to happen. So that's interesting. Are you about to get so he knew he was he was doing a show. He was showcasing it, and he couldn't get his pendulum to work. And he literally just said, "Oh, there, something natural disaster's happening." And it happened to be at the exact same time he was saying it. There was a massive tidal wave in Japan, and he was like, I'm sure he was in France. So, like at the exact same time your pendulum stopped working. But then dogs and cats, and then cows, they can tell when the atmosphere is changing. So the other thing, I think this is what I shared with you before. This is what I do, is I check my overall health. So this is just based on, Marty created a quadrant. So it's just a protractor. So blue, like you're dead here, right? If you're going this way, you're dead. So you're probably not going to be swinging it. So what I do is I will put my hand on it. You have to make sure you got no jewelry on, because that'll make a difference. So do it, just experiment, just have fun, right? So I will make sure I've taken all my jewelry off, and I'll put my hands on it, and I will hold the pendulum over. Oh, maybe I can show you. I can manipulate my camera. Here we go. I'm getting good at this now. Look. Oops, no. I've got my jewelry on at the minute though, so I'm not stripping it all off. So you just, there we go, put your hand over it, and then, oh, hold on. Oh, it doesn't want to pay. It's got performance anxiety. Okay, there we go. Where's that? Okay, so 3150-ish. So you'll feel it pull. So mine pulls down. When I first started doing it, I was about here, 1400. And that's when I was eating quite poorly, like lots of carbs, drinking lots of alcohol. And as soon as I kind of started getting around here, I'm normally like between here. So then you pick a thing. Right in here, I've got clary sage, fractionated coconut, a bit of frankincense, and a bit of rose oil. And you sometimes you do have to move it so it gets in the way, like up and down, just to try and get it to move. And then you see, whoops, it's going to move. So now, can you see it? It's gone higher. Oh, it's circling. Hold on. I can't. Oh, there we go. 400. Whoops. So it's saying, if you use this, Katie, you're going to go from, what did I say, 3150 up to 3,400. There's a huge jump in health. Right? I mean, if I kind of put, I swear I haven't got no Baileys with me. If I put Baileys, I like it though. So okay, here's another one, because it doesn't like me using this. Just so you can see, this is a blend called Nesh Sharma, which has got loads of stuff in, but it doesn't. It always tells me off. It smells really nice though. Oh look, if I use this, my health will drop to 2,500. Oh no, 2,400. It really doesn't like it. Right, so something in there. It's just like, nah, Rob, don't need that one. It's crazy. So do it. Test the food that is good for you. If you use, take supplements, if you use essential oils, if you are worried about your health, there's loads of different things that you can do for your health. You can literally get a silhouette of a person. You can just print out a silhouette, and you can like very slowly move, and you like kind of you have to have the intention that it's you, and you can just very slowly move it along, and it will swing over your organs. You can kind of like concentrate it on, and it will tell you whether any of your organs are like funny. If you're doing it on another person, you can just hover it very slowly over them, and it'll move to tell you that there's an ache or a pain or something. It's literally paying attention to any disruptions in flow of the energy field of the person, thing, object, whatever you are knocking around with. So it is one of the easiest, cheapest ways to really take control of your health. Something else that, if you can't get access to the doctor, like I don't care if I can't get to the doctors. I mean, if I'd have known about that during COVID, fine. Oh yeah, so I was telling you, if you don't have to have access to the actual thing, you can just write it down, it's fine. So like maybe if you are struggling with something and you do a bit of research, and maybe you find, like, say for example, vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc are all useful, right? But do you need all of them before you take them? Because if you have more vitamins, you're actually more likely to make you unwell than you have a little bit. It takes you a really long time, and you're probably getting them through other bits of food, right? So you could just write vitamin C, write vitamin D, and write zinc on a bit of paper, and you could just hold the pendulum over. If it swings clockwise, saying, yeah, take this thing. If it's swinging anti-clockwise, it's saying no thanks. Or you can put a bit of paper on your protractor with your hand over it, and is it saying it's going to give you this boost? And just so you know, if I do this, or sometimes it'll say no to this. So it's not always, it's not like you do this once and that's it. So it gives you the confidence to look after your own health. But again, you can ignore it, like, because I'm eating mince pies because it's mince pie season for me, like homemade mince pies. And it would say no to mince pies. It would say no to cakes. I know it say no to red wine and Baileys. And that's not like a red wine Baileys like mix. Like I would say no to that without the dowsing intervention. But it's about having freedom of choice, freedom of control. So if you are somebody who has physical complications or mental health complications, it's a really cool thing to do. However, I'm going to caveat you here. If you have lots of mental health and emotional complications, you are going to be energetically unstable. So it is the same sort of principles if you're using any kind of kinesiology, right? So you can ask yourself very basic yes no questions using kinesiology. This is like, they call it like the sway method, where you just kind of stand up, close your eyes, ask yourself a question. If you pulled forwards, it's a yes. If you pulled backwards, it's a no. However, if you have lots of emotional trauma that you have not dealt with, is you will not have a cohesive energetic system. So the actual energy in your system is not flowing correctly. Think of it like you've got like blocked arteries, like your blood circulation doesn't happen properly. It's the same with your energy. And so it doesn't always work. And I mean, like, it actually just won't do anything. So be careful. If you have lots of emotional trauma, you need to deal with that first, and then you can use it. So when I'm teaching people how to use it in my therapy program, this is like week 8. So we've already done like a lot of work first, so that they're in a place where they're healthy. And then now I'm giving them tools that will help them control their life. Like, they're no longer definitely no longer suicidal, but now they're in a place of looking towards the future. So it's something that you can use to protect yourself moving towards your future. But it can also be used depending on how honed your psi skills are. Maybe it might help you with some remote viewing, or if you want to know the winning lottery numbers, I don't know. I think you have to be pretty. I think anybody asking for the winning lottery numbers would probably be emotionally attached to the outcome and probably very unlikely to work. However, there's a couple of people from the remote viewing experiments at Stanford Research Institute did successfully remote view the stock market multiple times and generate hundreds of thousands of pounds. So it can be used to generate money, but I would just hazard a guess that you have to be pretty skilled to trust it. And the way that they did it is there was multiple people all kind of doing precognitive remote viewing, right? So predicting the future, and the multiple people would kind of come together, and it was only when they all had the same thing then they kind of did it. So they never just relied on one individual person. So you could set up a pendulum group, and you and 6 other people all douse for the lottery numbers, right? And when you get the same number, that's the one you throw on. Maybe I should create my own little lottery group. But so just look, have fun with it. Look, the best thing to do is kind of do some of those like experiments where you are just, you know, get somebody you like, get somebody you know to go and hide some stuff in the garden, like go and bury some check what a £2 coin looks like and feels like. I mean, 2p, let's do 2p's because in case you lose it, right? No, do a 2p. Check what it looks like and see where it pulls to. And then go out into the garden and see if you can find it, right? Do stuff to just like be the skeptic, have fun, play with it, and then just start using it to free you from the clutches, if you're in the UK, of the NHS. Because the pharma companies, wherever you are in the world, they make money off you being unwell, right? So if you can figure out what food you need, what exercise you need, what supplements you need, perhaps what essential oils you need, or whatever other kind of healing modality that is non-pharmacological based, which is actually going to be beneficial for you, like that's so much better than relying on the pharmacologies, which is designed to keep you paying them, not freeing you. So hope you enjoyed that last little teabag trick. Have yourselves an amazing rest of your week. I shall see you next Monday, and hopefully the world won't have gone to shit by then, but who knows. See you. Bye for now.